morning, ladies.
Good morning.
Good morning. Good morning. Who do we have today?
We have Rachel Zaremba.
Yes.
And I practiced a lot on that because I knew I was going to mess up the last name, but how did I do?
Perfect.
Okay, great.
Yes.
Wait, we have to include it's Polish, right?
It's Polish.
It's
Okay,
Polish.
perfect.
It's
Yes.
beautiful.
Okay, well, I guess give us some of your ethnicity roots.
It is not my last name. It's my husband's
Oh, okay.
last name.
Good point.
I think it's really cool because people are like, what's that last name? And they think it's exotic and like maybe African or something.
Yeah.
Because it sounds, but it's not. It's just, it's like Smith in Poland. It's really common there.
Okay.
So
So what is your ethnicity?
I'm kind of a mix of all of the white countries,
Okay.
German, Dutch, England, like Scottish, like all of the whitest of white.
I love that. Okay, great.
So we have to give them the background because I have not. Today is the first day we're meeting, and
Yeah.
I remember when Natasha started seeing you. So Natasha, you started seeing her for
Yeah, I feel like it was 3 years ago. Me and time, it's like a weird thing. But yeah, I was 6 years sober and I had done therapy like right when I got into sobriety, which was like my first year. And I did talk therapy, which I don't know, that hasn't really worked for me. I do find now that I'm back into therapy because of a lot of the work that I have done, it's a little bit easier for me to do the talk therapy.
Oh, good.
I had so many blocks, so it was really hard for me to like be honest and really even form the vocabulary to describe what I was feeling.
Yeah.
So I have a question. Okay, so
Yeah.
can you tell me what what you have license wise and what it is that you do?
Yes, I'm a licensed marriage and family therapist.
Okay.
And I have a private practice. So I started that. Thank you.
You're welcome.
I started that in 2022, I guess.
Oh, fairly new.
Yeah.
Wow.
So before that, I worked at My Time Recovery.
Okay.
And
Which
I-
is here in Fresno,
Yes.
California.
Yeah.
Yes, it's I was the inpatient therapist there.
Oh, crazy.
So, and before that, I worked at an agency called Uplift Family Services, and I provided mental health to youth in probation and foster care.
Wow.
Yes, so that's where I started.
Okay. So, and then you hear about, so how did you end up in this style of therapy or what? Okay. So tell me this.
Yeah, it's so weird. I feel like, and that's why I'm glad we're doing this episode, is that I had never even heard of what EMDR, and that's primarily what I worked on with you.
Yeah.
And can you just explain to everybody what EMDR is?
Yes. So EMDR stands for eye movement desensitization and reprocessing. That's a mouthful.
I know.
So it replicates the REM cycle of sleep. So when we're sleeping, the brain goes into REM and it processes the information you get throughout the day. And most stuff, our brain decides, like, I don't need that, so it just gets rid of it. And so when we're like going throughout our lives, if there's an incident that's traumatic, our brain decides I need to keep this and store it because this information will be helpful for me in the future so I can remember it and I can be prepared when this happens again. But what happens is we store it and now it's stuck in my body, it's stuck in my mind. And when the body thinks it's happening again, I'm in a full trauma response again, thinking my body thinks it's happening again. And so EMDR processes the stuck memory so that it can be filed away just like a normal memory.
Yeah.
Wow. And how do you do that? What does that process entail, or how did?
It uses bilateral stimulation, which sounds really fancy. I like to do pulsers where you hold them in your hand and they pulse back and forth. So that's my
Interesting.
favorite. You can also tap. And I was originally trained in eye movement. And why I stopped using eye movement is because I dissociate almost immediately during eye movement. And I notice a lot of clients do also. And so when I like the pulsers because you can close your eyes and you can really drop into your body. And
What is it signaling? So when you put these pulsers in, what is it signaling to the brain, or what is it doing? So is it sending an actual shock in each hand?
it's just pulsing, like it goes bzz, bzz, and it is bilateral stimulation. So it's the back and forth of the two hemispheres of the brain, like REM cycling.
Okay.
So when the eyes go back and forth, that's the two hemispheres of the brain. So that's what is the processing part.
Wow.
And that's why we like metronomes and walking and things like that. Like it's very soothing to our
There's
nervous
like this
system.
huge wave of bilateral stimulating music.
Yeah. Yes.
And I found that that's like helped me. And it almost puts you, for my experience, is like in a hypnotic state, like you said, REM, like when you're about to fall asleep.
Right.
And so you can access those painful or scary memories in a more relaxed setting, because it's almost like you're there, but you're not there.
You mentioned disassociation. So when you say disassociation with the idea of that happening, how do you know when you start to disassociate versus when you are actually processing this? That question makes sense. Like,
How can I see when a client's dissociating?
yeah, like,
Well, your eyes change. So I can see when someone's dissociating just by the change of their eyes. It's like a little glazed over look. And it's a really helpful and beautiful strategy that we have as humans to dissociate.
Yeah.
But when we're here in the present moment, I need you to be here with me now. And so it's just difficult because it's escaping when we dissociate. And everyone, dissociates every day on a spectrum. But, when you're processing, it's helpful to be here now.
And as a patient, like, I wasn't really aware of my dissociation. I knew that I obviously probably did it, but I feel like doing EMDR showed me the difference because of feeling my feet on the ground, feeling my bottom in the chair, and then having those pulsers.
Yeah.
I started to feel when I would dissociate, which is like, actually you feel like your energy source for me is like leaving your body.
Yeah.
It's like,
Yeah, exactly.
it's somewhere, and it's not completely out of your body, but sometimes it's just like hovering above. So you're not totally present with feeling everything that is occurring in the moment.
Right. Which is why it's stored in the first place, because I couldn't handle it the first time I left my body. It was like something that I couldn't tolerate. And so a lot of healing is just tolerating the emotion, knowing it's not going to kill you. And then when you can feel it, it can leave. And
holy shit, say that again. That's so good.
I think I said a lot of healing is tolerating the emotion. And when you feel it, it leaves. And that's mostly all healing, is just feeling the things we don't want to feel. And you guys know everything cycles back around. And a lot of times we're like, man, I wish I would have just dealt with this the first time, instead of like having the universe bring it back around to me again and having to feel it now.
And sometimes again, and again, and again.
You said in realizing when it's not going to kill you.
Yes.
Right.
Yes. That's so important.
So you end up, Natasha, you tell me, who even brought up the term EMDR, and how did you end up in her office, or what made you decide that was also, I love you very much, and that white thing over your head right now is driving me nuts. Will you push it on the chair?
Oh, I think my clip got it.
Yeah, there you go.
Okay, thank you so much, friend.
Yeah, it was. So who told you about it?
Honestly, like, I'm trying to think back on how it came up, but I think I just started Googling trauma therapy, and that EMDR came up for me. And then I looked at some videos and I was like, oh, like, I don't know, something stuck out to me when it talked about being able to go back to painful experience. And then it brought up like the REM sleep. And I was like, okay. And like, kind of to go back. So when I decided to go into therapy with you, I was 6 years sober, and I had just done ayahuasca. And for me, I feel like EMDR is very similar to ayahuasca, or in some cases, some types of plant medicine has been my experience. Because we discussed it last week, but going back into painful events and being able to reprocess that information is exactly what I've been able to do with EMDR therapy. So I go and have the ayahuasca experience, relived my entire life from utero to ego death. Mm-hmm. And then I had all of this stuff that like rose to the surface. And I had no idea that I had PTSD or complex PTSD. I had anxiety, but I was like a high functioning, anxiety driven person. Mm-hmm. And once all that stuff came to surface, I started like having mini panic attacks. Like I would feel things in my body and then just have outbursts of like crying. And I was like, I got to do something to deal with this. And like I had said, I had done therapy in the past, didn't really get much out of it. And I look back and it was because I had so many mental blocks and so many dissociation techniques that I couldn't access those painful memories. Like my mind was like trying to protect me.
I was just going to say, what happens when you have somebody who shows up and then, I can think of things that happen. I'm like, what happens when you don't remember? Like how does that even come about that you guys are able to get to that place if you can't remember those incidences? Well,
I think you kind of had mentioned it. It's like the body. I mean, there's great books now. The body holds a score. It's like it's in there.
Yeah.
And it comes out. It's just hidden.
Yeah.
So do you help them with getting to that space? Like what happens if somebody says, I don't remember, I know that something traumatic happened. Can you help them get there?
Usually it's not laid out like that. And it happens like a repressed memory will just come out because it's in the body. Yeah. And so as we're processing something, the body is constantly communicating to us. And so I use a lot of, they call it somatic techniques where you feel it in your body. And I believe that when you bring your awareness to the space in your body, you can ask it for images and it will show you what it's trying to tell you. And I think that the relationship that I build with my clients builds this trusting relationship where the body trusts me and is willing to give me the information, even though that sounds kind of weird.
No, but it's almost like, right? It's you're able to read the emotions. It's a little bit of,
I can feel them, which is helpful because of my past trauma. I can feel people's feelings. So it's helpful because I'll feel it and then I can be like, what are you feeling right now? And so most of the time I'm asking that question because I'm feeling it.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, so were you always an empath? Sorry.
Yes.
No, go for it.
Always. So you've kind of always known that you could feel things and.
Well, I don't think I realized that's what I was doing. I probably started drinking because of that, like originally because it's overwhelming to feel other people's feelings. And I probably used to make me feel angry now that I'm thinking about it because it was, again, I'm an addict and that's recovered. We haven't gotten to that, but one of the things that's common with people like me is that I can't tolerate the feelings. And so I think I self-medicated a lot before I realized it was such a gift, that I realized it was a sixth sense and that it's makes me a good therapist.
Wow.
Yeah.
Do you kind of want to go into that, like your journey through recovery and if you do therapy and
because
like
most would think,
she
she probably didn't have those kind of things, right? As the assumption of that you're the therapist, right? And that you're not human.
Yeah, I have gotten that, like, you don't look like an alcoholic, which I think is so funny because what do alcoholics look like? And I try to use that to educate people. Like, it's really any profession, we're everywhere. So where do you want to start with that? Do you want to finish the part where you were going before, or do you want to switch gears?
We want to hear you.
Okay,
I want to hear your story. Yeah. Sorry, not that yours isn't important.
No. That's good. Where should we start with that?
Just kind of like what got you into AA, like your whole journey as far as that goes.
Well, my drinking really became problematic at age 19 when I had my first drink. And I was never going to drink because my dad's an alcoholic. And then when I finally had like a cigarette, I was like, oh my gosh, it was so magical. And then I had a drink and I was like, oh, my mom has it all wrong. My dad's got it all figured out. This is the best. And then I met my husband, and he's an alcoholic. And I had a drinking buddy, and we drank until I was 33. Wow. And I tried to get sober for about 7 years. And it was progressive. I got worse and worse. I tried Celebrate Recovery, and I tried this group at my church called Region, and a bunch of 12-step groups, and nothing worked. I tried therapy. I became a therapist.
Yeah. When did that idea come?
To be a therapist?
Yeah. Was it?
Now, I have recently realized that the part of me that needed my dad to pick me became a therapist. And that she was seeking ways, like there's a part of me that wants to heal people because I really needed my dad to heal, because I really needed him to love me. And I just recently realized that part of me got me here. But I just took a psychology class and was like, oh, this is so fascinating. I can figure people out more. So after that, I got a BA in psychology, which you can't do anything with. It's a pretty useless degree. So I was like, well, I might as well just become a therapist. And it was really, I was an alcoholic the whole way.
Gotcha. I was just going to ask
through
that.
School. So it was really difficult. It took me 10 years to get through school because I was drinking the whole time. And
did you get married during this time too?
Got married, had children. That also slowed me down. I had, I guess by the time I graduated, I had 3 kids. Does that math work out? Yeah. And so it just took a long time. And being an alcoholic during the process was really agonizing because I could not figure out why the therapy wasn't healing me from my alcoholism. And I really thought it was the solution. And I kept going to therapists, and they would all agree with me, like, oh, your husband is the problem. I'm like, yeah, I know. He's the problem.
Well, and I think that's an important point, because I know when I was doing talk therapy, like it got to a point where like I would just be lying in therapy.
Yeah.
And it's not like I was purposely trying to, but it was like I didn't know how to tell the truth.
Yeah.
Because I didn't even know what I was feeling or what I was experiencing. And yeah, it's really easy to be able to manipulate your therapist.
That just makes me think of my first marriage right now. You know, I was young and married, but it's making me realize that when I was going to that therapist, which I loved her, she was kind of like this old hippie with like this kind of mini afro, and she had these bell bottoms, and it was a lot of like, now I'm taking ownership of the fact that it was us two against him and trying to convince him that he was, not convince him, but telling him that he was the narcissist. I don't even know if that was a term. This was 2000, who knows what. But now that as I'm sitting here reflecting, I mean, that's kind of what we did. It was like that he was the problem, and we were trying to tell him that he was the problem. And we've spent thousands of dollars for an entire year going over and over, and we were pointing fingers. Now I'm like, I'm having that realization right now. And we were both alcoholics at the time too.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, same. And my husband is very charismatic, so we'd have these women therapists, and they would just be like buying into all of his stuff, and I'd be there so mad, like he's manipulating you right now, and you don't get it. And
you're like, listen, he's putting the moves on you too, doctor.
Exactly.
Oh my God.
Well, I think one thing too that is interesting is like, I know for me, obviously I didn't have the tools, and I was just learning how to express myself verbally when I had first started therapy. So it might have been a completely different experience, like where I'm at. But I did get into the like retelling of the story, right? And what I love about EMDR, that it's not really all the time even telling the story. It's like going back to the root and changing it so that I don't have to keep telling the story over and over again.
Right. Yeah, it's amazing. I really think that it is literally changing it. Like, so I think it's like we're time traveling, we're going through the quantum field and we're changing the experience and we're releasing the energy that's trapped there and we're rewriting the story, which is so neat that you can do that because we feel so stuck.
We need to plug our practice right about now.
Yeah. Where are you located? And give us a little information.
I am only online right now.
Okay, gotcha.
So I had a baby 10 months ago. I had to let go of my office and all this stuff. Thank you. So she was my little ayahuasca baby.
Oh.
Yeah.
Did she drink Aya?
No.
I thought she did. I was like, oh, whoa, can you imagine?
No, as soon as I came back down to this time-space reality, she was created. But yeah, so I have a full practice because I only work 2 mornings a week right now.
Okay.
So I'm very invested in my baby's secure attachment.
I get that.
And
how great, right?
Yeah.
Like you go and learn the things
I know.
and you heal your past and then you're able to show up in the world and for your family
Yes.
the way that you probably needed.
Okay.
Exactly. Oh my gosh. It's just like my baby is so healing to me that it's like full circle, like watching her be loved, watching her get the things that I didn't get, and not because my parents didn't want to, but because they couldn't. And I just am so grateful that I've come this far to where I can even know that any of this, like I would have had no idea that secure attachment was a thing, you know? So they don't even teach you that in school. Like that's
like a higher level learning.
Yeah.
No, we have ABCs to learn, right? So wait, I want to go back to the story because I want to hear the whole thing. So let me think. Where were we? Where did we leave off?
For school. So I
10 years,
graduate
right. Yeah.
and I'm still an alcoholic. And I do my hours. We have to do hours of like supervised therapy. I did it at a residential treatment center called Spirit of Woman, which is closed down now, but it used to be down by the zoo and the women could come in with their children. It was the only program there. And I just fell in love with it. I was like, really wanted to rescue the women, save them, get their kids. And the whole time I was an alcoholic, like full blown. So it was just agony because I was my internal story was you're a fraud, like all of the things we tell ourselves. And it was really agonizing to go through that. And I moved on from there and I still didn't get sober until many years later when I finally was willing to go to treatment myself.
And how did that look for you? Treatment is so different for so many people. What was your treatment experience?
Well, my sister tried to scoop me up and take me to Salvation Army.
Oh.
And I went home and was like, I'll get pregnant. So I got pregnant. And because that's how I used to get sober.
Oh, yeah.
I was like, I'll get sober for 9 months.
Good 9 months.
And I'm going to be cured. So I went home, I got sober for 9 months and I had my baby and I was like, perfect, I'm healed. And then 3 days after he was born, I was drinking again. Wow. And my mom was the real reason that I got into treatment. She just one day was like, you promised you would go. And I just surrendered. It's like I felt my shoulders drop and I was like, fine. And I had all these reasons why I wouldn't go to treatment. I couldn't see clients. Like that was a big barrier.
So you were graduated already.
Yeah, I was
practicing.
Like, working. Yeah. So I was like, they can't know about me. And it really kept me sick. The shame of that lie that I was telling myself, like I can't go in because people will know.
And I would like to get into that after you finish your story.
Yeah.
I feel like shame is a huge, I don't know. I feel like I'm just figuring out what that really means and how it affects us on a everyday basis.
Because the truth is, me hearing that story is like, okay, you're the therapist I want to go to. I mean, this day and age, right?
Yes.
Like a few years ago, I'd say pre-COVID, I would have been like, oh, maybe judgy, right?
Yeah,
Now where I'm at, I'm like, I want the therapist that knows what it feels like to be in the fucking trenches like me, right? And understand what it's like to be a fucking mom and a wife and all these things and trying to manage all this shit, and can also say that they had a drinking problem like I fucking did.
Well, it's the
Take
human
me to that
experience.
therapist.
I feel like we were talking about it before. It's like we live in such a curated society, and it's great. Like I love seeing the reels or where you wake up and you have your green tea matcha and you put on the perfect outfit and you go to the gym.
Get ready with me.
And your house is, spick and span. But the one thing that therapy and plant medicine and ceremony has allowed me to do is to face my shadow self and to release that shame and to be myself. Like I'm not perfect. And I think society at this point, I know I could speak for me. Like I
think we know perfection ain't a fucking thing.
We don't want it.
Freaking thing anymore.
We want like realness.
Real, raw.
That's what I want,
Yeah.
So you go to therapy now. Now you're like, okay, you decided you were going to go.
Oh, I went to treatment. Yeah. And I walked through the doors and the obsession was lifted from me. I felt it like this tingling feeling. And then I found the rooms of AA, which is really what changed my life. And yeah, to what you're saying, being an alcoholic is the best part of therapy for me now. And it was just the lies I was telling myself to keep me sick, to keep me stuck because I was...
And to keep you safe.
Yeah, to keep me safe.
Or what you thought at the time, your mind, you're right?
Yeah.
Like to keep you safe.
Right. And I have not run into any client that's like, oh, I don't want to work with you. I mean, everyone has addictions.
Some type of addiction.
Substances is what we all agree is like they're the bad ones, but workaholism destroys families, gambling it destroys families, sex,
food,
right?
Working out, anything to escape who we are and what we're feeling at the moment. Some are more positive than others according to society. But like that stigmatization of being an alcoholic, calling yourself an alcoholic. I know that was a huge thing for me. Now I don't feel that way, but it took me many years in recovery to even be okay with saying my truth that like at that time I identified as an alcoholic.
Yes. Which is what keeps us sick it's
our secrets.
The secrets. Yeah. And now when I see clients in meetings, that's my favorite. I'm like, oh my gosh, or if I run into someone I know, I'm like, oh my gosh, you're here too.
Yeah.
Like it's like the best ever to be like, oh good.
Yeah.
This is so good that you're my people.
So you still go to meetings?
I still go to meetings. Yeah.
Awesome. And it's funny how sometimes for me, I think it was a little shameful, right? Like I was like ayahuasca and I was using plant medicine. So then I was like, I don't know if I can go to AA, because again,
that is a huge stigma that a lot of people feel like going to ayahuasca. Some people believe like even using prescription drugs like in the rooms is sometimes stigmatized that you're not sober or but my understanding now, and you can kind of speak on it, is like even the literature talks about how it's an outside issue, right? And there's like some verses that say that like some people are more mentally challenged or have higher mental issues that need to be addressed.
Yeah.
So how do you balance that with, are you an advocate for plant medicine? Do you think there's a space for it in therapy? Like, what is your take on that and like being sober?
Well, you actually were a big reason that I did ayahuasca, and our friend Jen, you guys both told me and my whole body lit up when I heard your story. So it was like a full body yes for me. And I don't ever tell my clients to do plant medicine, but I will share my experience. And what plant medicine does what I believe is it does like a 20 years worth of work in a setting.
Yeah, I agree.
And I know people that have done it and they couldn't be where they are without it. I wouldn't be where I am now.
Yeah, here, me too.
So I I was determined to hold on to the pain that I had stuck inside of me. And there's nothing in my humanness that would have ever let it go. So God found a way for me to release it.
Well, and I think that's a good segue. You do a lot with parts work.
Yeah.
Right? Mm-hmm. And I have this quote. It says, parts work goal is to heal and integrate wounded parts by becoming your own. No Bad Parts, and by Richard C. Schwartz. And you kind of discussed a little bit about it as far as there's parts of yourself that would never have allowed you to access the parts that needed to be healed, right?
Yeah.
So do you want to kind of go into like parts work and how you've used it and how you use it with your clients?
Yes. Well, we all have parts. And I honestly, the more that I heal, I'm realizing it's not just parts, that it's literal parts. And I think, and this is going to sound
I
controversial.
love this. I want to hear it.
I think almost everyone that I know has DIDS, is a dissociative identity disorder.
That is very interesting because...
Okay, hold on. I need to understand this. Okay, first of all, parts, when we're referring to parts, what are you referencing?
Parts is internal family systems. So they believe that inside of us, there's these structures, like there's manager parts. Those parts are task-oriented. They get things done. Our culture really likes them. So they're the ones that are organized and everything. And then we have these other parts that are called exile parts. Those are the parts that you could also call like a shadow part. They're the wounded child inside.
They don't get in line.
Yeah, they're the parts we reject of our own self. They're weak or whatever, bad or whatever our labeling. We kind of shove them aside. And then we have firefighter parts. Those are our addictions. They come in like, hey, don't look at the exile. Like, look over here. Let's buy this. So it's a beautiful system that really describes our internal processes and how we can cope with different things. But I think that I've realized it's not just an internal family system, that it's a literal fragment of our psyche. And it starts really early on.
Well, and also, okay, you're going to do the therapist part, but my understanding is that when we go through traumatic events, our mind literally fragments to protect ourselves from that experience. And then sometimes people can create this identity that comes forward to like protect us, right?
Yes.
And then you have like the major where people who like have named the identity.
Yes.
But I think about it all the time. Like I've thought about this very thing. I was like, I might have a little bit of that. And then it makes you think, everybody's gone through trauma.
And we've talked, I can't remember what book it was, but I reference all the time. I'm like, I remember identifying the stadium in my head, right? Like starting to really have a relationship with the people that would come forward. I remember one time being on a date and like shaming myself as if, this like traditional old Catholic grandfather yelling at myself and like shaming I wasn't even doing anything. I was on a date, right? And then having to make a relationship with that aspect of myself and then let her know like, hey, you're safe. You're not being a whore. You're not being these things that you're telling yourself. And it's okay. Thank you for that. And working through that. So I used to reference it all. I still do, right? As the stadium in my head.
Yeah.
But now I can see it. You're saying, so it's is it a literal 3-part? Not literal, but is there only 3 parts that?
Oh, no. There can be lots of parts. Yeah. And it's a spectrum, like you were describing. Well, and even to, if the fragment's projected to where it does have a personality, and they have studies like a part can have a tumor and the other parts don't.
So interesting.
And that's wild because that means that part that has the tumor has an imagination that created a life where they're under stress, where they created a tumor, and it's all in the imagination. And that's wild. It gives me God bumps because that's like a parallel timeline that
I was going to say that's a timeline.
It is.
Another timeline that exists.
And that really gets crazy when you want to go there.
It goes into the time traveling, right? Like when I really realized what happens with meditation to where like we time travel all the time, especially if you go into meditation, because you're literally going back to the past.
Yes.
And our body does not know the difference between an experience and a memory.
Yeah.
Like our body, like if we go back to a traumatic event or we make up the story in our mind, our blood pressure will rise. Like we believe that it's actually occurring.
Right.
Yeah.
And I know the work that I've done, I feel like I have changed as a person because I've been able to go back to those painful events, see it differently, take a new knowledge, and then even new vocabulary. I know when I started working with you, you would be like, I would see my small child and you'd be like, okay, what are you going to say to her? And because I didn't even have the vocabulary or grow up in a home to give the words that I would give a child, you were able to help me with that. So you would say things and then I would repeat that to my inner child. And then that's how I'm relearning as a child, going back into the past of how to parent myself and talk to myself.
Isn't that amazing?
It's so amazing. Chills. And I remember even having to not even use the term timeline, because I think that like time traveling for a moment there would be like, oh yeah, whatever, that you can't time travel. And then just even changing that idea, just telling myself like, oh, I'm going back to those aspects or that, and reparenting myself as if I'm parenting my own child, right? Like you're describing. And then when I was able to go back little by little, I'm like, okay, like poor little Catherine.
Yeah.
You know, poor me, or I needed to hear this at that time. And now telling myself that, and make it, for me, even a step further, making the connection with myself in the mirror now as an adult.
Yeah.
Being able to really look into myself and be like, hey, you know, I'm here.
Well, and that's the parts work, right? Like you're doing it just because like spirituality in the quantum field, you're getting that oneness of information, that universal consciousness that's available for everybody. And you're doing parts work, you're doing shadow work, just your higher self is giving you the information.
Well, and my friend named Natasha and all of my other friends that are in therapy as well. And then it was like, we were just kind of doing this big soupy healing thing together that became really just... Because I think a few other people that we know also went, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I know,
so
like,
so amazing.
I'm glad, like, and that's the big thing with having this episode is I want people to know what is out there. And some people aren't ready for plant medicine. It's not for them. They don't want to do psychedelics, like, you know, and teach their own. But here is something that you can do and you can get the same effect of going on a journey.
Yeah. Right.
So I kind of wanted to know what your therapy journey has been.
Your first EMDR
what led you
experience.
to ayahuasca, and kind of like how that's changed not only you, your family, and like your practice.
Well, I learned EMDR after school. I was trained, and I learned a lot about trauma from Gabor Mate.
I love him, by the way, Gabor.
He's amazing.
Tyler's like raising his fist.
Yeah.
Oh, when I worked at My Time, I pretty much just learned everything I could about trauma and addiction, and he understands to a level that most people don't. So, and I've had some really good therapists. I've had some not good therapists because I'm very fragmented. I present very stoically. And a lot of therapists were like, couldn't do anything with me because I'm sitting there.
You're a hard nut to crack.
Nothing. Like, and it was, I felt so bad for them, but like, there's all this going on, but I have learned through my trauma to not show any of that.
Well, and I think that's an important thing to note, right?
Yeah.
Like, some people are just not capable of going there, or the amount of trauma that they have experienced, they can't, being fully conscious, cannot access it because and for some people it will destroy them. Like the events are so traumatic. And that's why, like, I'm a huge advocate for PTSD and plant medicine and psychedelics and everything that is going, because no matter what amount of work you do, some people cannot access those memories.
Yeah. Right. Because they're their system thinks they're going to die.
I think that was mine.
Yeah. Right.
I honestly think that was mine. I didn't want to. I would talk about it, but not want to feel it. I think, you know. I thought I was going to die from having to experience it all. And in my ayahuasca experience, I did. I literally burned in hell over and over, you know, and experienced it. So, and then I was like, oh, awful, but then also good, right?
You didn't die.
I didn't die.
That's what Brenda said. But did you die?
Our friend Brenda Lasky, the one that did ayahuasca with us, a couple times I've almost died. And she's like, yeah, but did you die?
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, God. Okay, fine. No, I didn't.
Yeah.
All right. I'm here.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. So I guess in my therapy journey, I have a therapist now. I still see a therapist every week, and she's pretty well known in the AA community.
Love that.
Caroline.
I almost went to her.
Yes.
Because whenever I decided to get back into EMDR, you were not available. It was very sad. Then you recommended Caroline, and then I'm with a woman named Maria, which it's very hard to find therapists who specialize in EMDR.
Yes.
And are covered through therapy.
Yeah.
Or covered through insurance, I'm sorry.
Yes. Right.
I did find an app too. Have you seen that app where you can do it? There's like a whole app now that you can do, and it has like these guided, and then like the tapping, it'll tell you where to tap.
The EMDR app.
That's
super
great.
cool. So I was like, oh.
I tried to buy some remotes online, but I couldn't find them.
Yeah.
They were like, ma'am, these are
I
not
was like, I need
for
to hit her
that.
up and be like, because they're just soothing too, and they help with like meditation and just like sometimes I'll go into therapy, and my therapist like I'll come in with really like I don't know, like my central nervous system just very elevated, and then she'll get those going, and then I'm able to like come into that in between.
Yeah.
So, okay, we're going to go all over the place, but tell us about your therapy experience and what you're like working on and what she's doing.
Oh, now the work that I'm doing, it's all parts work. It's dissociative identity disorder. And she's like, you're a did. And I've just had to fully accept that. My husband's a did, and I'm like looking around at everyone around me, and I'm like, oh my gosh, we're all dids.
And how did that feel for you getting that diagnosis?
Awful. Scary. I still don't tell my clients now.
Yeah.
I've only actually told one person because they were so fragmented that they were about to destroy their life. And I was like, told them, and it's so jarring to hear that. Luckily, God, like the universe was really gentle with me because everyone close to me had it. My, acupuncturist did. My sponsor has it. My sponsee sister. My husband's like, I have DIDs. Like everyone was like gently telling me, which is me telling me, right? If we really think about it. And so when I went there, I was just like, oh, and I'm not fragmented to the point where they have names and I lose consciousness or they're amnesic.
And that's kind of how I feel.
Is that what
about
happens?
Me.
They can, you can have, you can lose like awareness. I have had periods of time, like I don't remember the couple years after I got sober, I was back with my husband and he'll tell me about it. And I'm like, I have no idea. My adult self was not present. And that's really jarring. Like I've had a period of time where I was single and in a relationship and I wasn't an adult the whole time. And that's really jarring.
That's a huge thing.
Yeah.
Okay, so like me going into in my therapy process right now, I'm realizing like my relationship, especially with the male counterpart.
Yeah.
And how I would show up in relationships and barely knew of taking this time to not date. But I was showing up as a 3-year-old.
Yeah. Isn't that heartbreaking to think about? Like, why are those parts the one in charge of that? Because they needed to be loved, right?
Yeah.
Because I needed my dad to love me, which is really what it all comes down to. And it's like really jacked up but also beautiful that's the cycling. It's like those needs weren't met. And because God loves us so much, it's going to bring it back around and around so that it can be healed because God wants us to be complete.
100%. And then just realizing that there's hope out there, right?
Yeah.
Like any level of trauma that you've experienced, there's people and tools. And I know when I was going to go into therapy, I'm like, I don't want to spend this amount because I had to pay out of pocket.
Yeah.
My insurance didn't cover it at work. And I'm like, I don't want to spend my money on this. But I was thinking like, I'm spending money on buying a new car, getting my nails done, getting my hair done, and I haven't addressed like the inner stuff that needs to be addressed.
Yeah.
And I think that's a big thing with this podcast of how we have avatars, but we also have this spiritual aspect. Mm-hmm. And I know for me, for the longest time, I was trying to create this external perfection. If like I had the marriage and the house and the car and everything looked good on the outside, but the inside was a mess.
Yeah.
You know,
really hard.
Yeah, it definitely is.
Well, I think everybody who's watching or watches this, right, will be able to take bits and pieces of this and go, I can see myself as women, right, in this, just like us.
Yeah.
And bring an awareness to people that this stuff exists, right? And that there's no judgment with it.
Yeah, there's no shame. It's
shame.
Like we have such a stigmatization with mental health. And thankfully, it's gotten a lot better than I can remember when I was a kid.
Yeah.
But yeah, just being able to verbalize those things, like that shame, and we can kind of go into that, like that shame keeps us not only hidden from ourselves, but from like our friends, family, and then we're never able to address the issues that we need to address because we have so much shame around them.
Yeah.
And how does that come up for you, not only with yourself, but like with your patients? Like, I know I came and sat down and had a lot of shame, which you helped me work through.
Well,
or your take on shame, or shame? Like how that can...
I think shame is one of the just biggest barriers of healing, and it's for protection, like you mentioned, and it's kind of a lie that we tell ourselves. You could call it agreeing with the shadow. You know, those shadow aspects, they don't want us to heal. They don't want to step out into the light. And so whenever we agree with the shame, we're like agreeing with that unhealed part of us. And I believe what you bring into the light remains in the light.
Mm-hmm. I do too.
And so when we bring our awareness to those parts of us that are wounded, we're bringing the light to it, we're bringing the love to it. And that's what our wounded parts need, is love, compassion. And it's just so good. It's
crazy because shadow work, so many people try to bypass it.
Yeah.
So many people are afraid of it, especially if you have like a religious upbringing like I did. But just having that quote, like that you just said, that whatever you bring to the light is healing.
Remains in the light.
That just recently came to me. It was like, I would be so afraid to see and feel these parts in myself because I thought they would like destroy me and other people.
Yes.
And realizing they just need to come out and have the light shined on them. They just need love, healing. It's like integrating the ego.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? They just have tried to help me, and they helped me for a long time, and now I'm grown. I've like elevated in my psychology, and I'll sometimes have to talk to those shadow aspects and be like, I know that you're feeling this right now, and I know you want to act out in this way, but you don't have to do that anymore.
Sit down.
Like we have better tools.
Yeah.
I'm safe. Sit down. It's okay.
And I think that why therapy can be beautiful is because our coping strategy for those parts is not loving in the beginning. We usually hate those parts. I wish those parts weren't here. It's usually how we're coping. And another person can easily love them. Like, I easily love you and all the parts of you. It's like so easy to love you and all the parts of you. And then when someone does that for us, I can do it now. Like, oh, you don't feel the way that I feel about me. Okay, I can start using that language. And if we could just love ourselves the way we easily love other people, like how beautiful would it be to exist in this vessel if I could love me the way that I love other people?
Well, and it's like interesting because a lot of the like shadow aspects of myself, or the voices, are not even my voices.
Yes.
It's like what I grew up with, or what somebody said to me once when I was like 4 years old.
Yeah.
And then being able to, because let's be real, some people never had loving parents.
Yes.
That wasn't my experience, but some people will never be able to recreate that they had a mother and father that cared for them, right?
Yes.
But this form of therapy allows you to go in there and be that parent that you needed, right? Or have a facilitator help you have the vocabulary to speak to that part of yourself and learn to be taught to learn yourself, to learn to love yourself.
Yeah, thank goodness it's this way. We don't have to wait for our parents to heal enough to do it for us, that we can do it for ourselves.
Yeah.
So it's really beautiful the way that that's created.
Okay, so now I want to know the ayahuasca. So how you ended up there?
Well, I I had divorced my husband because I needed to get sober. So I left him and got sober, and we had a very abusive marriage. It was toxic, abusive, all of the bad things that you could possibly happen. And so I got sober, and I had just enough freedom that I was really satisfied with the amount of freedom that I had. And I was really satisfied hating him and blaming him for all of the bad things that happened in our marriage, knowing that he's wrong and he hurt me and I will never forgive him. And I was really convinced that that was the right way to live life. Wow. And even going through the steps, like I was not going to make amends to him anytime soon. Like maybe down the road, I will keep my pain. Thank you. Because I wasn't going to let it happen again is really unconsciously what I was doing. And then when you shared about your experience, it just really lit me up. And it wasn't anything in my awareness of why I did it besides that my higher self led me there. 100%. God led me there.
Which we talk about, the medicine chooses you.
Yes, it really did. And so I went. I traveled 5 hours in a car and went into the snow and this
Now, did you do Hummingbird?
Yeah, I did.
You did?
Yeah.
And did you go to Utah?
No, it was Big Bear County.
Oh, you did too. You went to the camp also. I don't know that they've been back to the camp for a minute now. The kids camp. So you did it at the kids camp where we did too.
Kids camp.
Oh my goodness.
And it was snowing, so there was
pretty.
Just this one lane to get in, and if someone was coming, you'd have to back up, and I was just like, what am I doing here? Yeah. This is this
And you went by yourself.
And I went by myself, which I don't do. I wasn't even born alone. I don't do things by myself.
True. Okay. And you're a twin, a paternal twin.
Yeah.
Okay.
And you
just
went
for the audience.
Okay, so in the snow.
So I went, and
I remember you going, and Natasha's like, she's drinking right now, and we were rooting you on, and I hadn't even met you, but it was this energetic thing where we're so excited. And Natasha was like, oh my God, I could just imagine.
Oh my gosh. It was so scary. That's just laying there, and I took the medicine, and then the journey was so scary for me. And
you did 2 or 3 days?
I did 2 days, and I was not going to do the second day because the first day was so terrifying.
Which happened.
And then they were like, but that's only half of the surgery.
Only half of it. You need the other beautiful.
So what was so terrifying about the first day, right? Your experience, because it's different for everyone.
Yeah. Well, for me, I was like, oh my gosh, this is a cult. I have just taken this medicine, and I'm going to be taken over by evil. This man walking around with this teeth necklace is evil.
That was
the devil.
So it's so interesting because my experience, because I have a lot of work to do with the male counterpart and fear and stuff like that. So where my mind went at the beginning was oh my God, I'm going to get raped. They just brought all of these women in here so that they could sexually assault us.
Oh my
And they were just waiting for us to pass out.
It's so scary.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you thought you were at a cult.
Yeah. I was like, oh my
gosh. You drank the juice.
What did I do? And then I don't know, for me, getting outside of my egoic mind was terrifying to me. And I was everything I thought of was happening. And I was I just drove 5 hours to here to drink poison, to heal from my dad drinking poison and harming me. Why did I do this?
I just turned into him.
What in the world? What is the point of this? And I set my intention for the first night. I think it was to I can't even remember, but I just, I experienced the death as well. I couldn't purge. I couldn't release.
Yeah, I didn't throw up the first
You
night
didn't purge at
either.
all the first night?
I did. I had to,
you did.
I had to make myself do it.
So is that like, yeah.
Yeah, which I looked over to the person next to me, and he like gestured to shoot myself in the head, and I'm like, yes, I do need to shoot myself in the head. Can I please make this scary
gestured
stop?
you?
Yeah, but it was to like make myself gag to throw up.
she saw-
But
you
that's
saw
what
it
my
as-
mind. Yeah.
yeah.
I was like, I do want to die. Just who has the gun so I can make this?
He's
stop?
like, no, the other way.
So I finally did, and then when I released this poison, which Mother Earth was really speaking to me, she was like, "Please let go. It hurts me to feel you holding onto the poison." And when I could feel her pain, I guess because I'm so empathetic or whatever it is, when I could feel her hurting because I was hurting, I was like, I just wanted to get it out. Like I wanted to get it out as much as I could. And then as I was coming back down, it just kind of like circled around, and ultimately what it came to was this, like, my consciousness showed me like the stained glass picture of Jesus kind of, and it was Christ consciousness and forgiveness, and that's the whole purpose, and is for me to forgive. And I think to me, that's the whole purpose of this human experience, is to forgive.
And forgive ourselves.
And to forgive ourselves and to forgive. And in that first journey, like, I was like a repressed memory came to me, and I was just really scared. My whole body was trembling. And then when I saw it, it was like, there's nothing I'm ever going to find in myself that's not me. And that's the wild thing.
Can you say that again?
Yeah, that needs to be a sweatshirt.
I know. There's nothing inside of me I'm ever going to find that's not more me. And I'm so scared to see more me, to remember more me, and it's really silly that those parts of me truly believe that I can't handle it, because it felt like I'm going to die at that time. And I stayed for the next day, and I really didn't want to. And it was just as awful, just as scary. It was so miserable. And I was reborn. I was back in my mother's womb with my sister. And
Wow. Yeah. I had that experience too, being in the womb, but it's interesting because I wasn't in there with another person, you know?
Right. And in real life, we had a last minute C-section. So when I was back in the womb on my journey, I was so scared to be separated from my mom. I was like, I can't go through the birth canal. And I was reliving the fear of not wanting to be born, not wanting to be scared.
And then she had a C-section.
She had, so in real, I think I
literally can feel chills in my body.
And I didn't know she was going to be there when I came out because I was a baby. So I was like, I'm going to be separated from you. This is the worst thing that's ever going to happen. So I wanted to stay in, and they had to do a C-section. But this time I told my sister I'm going to go through. And I went through the birth canal, and it was disgusting.
So you went through,
okay, so gross.
On your journey, you went through the birth
journey,
but in the past, or the 3D version, you came out in a C-section.
In a C-section. I was too scared to leave.
But you went through.
I went through.
The
I was reborn.
ceremony.
Yeah. Wow. So I did it. I went through the birth canal, and my mom was still there.
Now, okay. Did you feel a common theme that was in your life, having that C-section experience, or having that fear of being separated from your mom? Do you feel like that shadowed over your life?
Yes.
Because I'll go into my experience, but I want to hear yours.
Oh my gosh, I think that my human brain says it's my mom, but I really think it's our separation from the creator, from source. I think when we come down and the veil is put over us to where we feel separate, I think that's the original abandonment wound that I'm healing from.
Okay, so you've carried that on.
I think so.
From that experience.
I think that in my little baby psyche, I was like, well, mama is God. You know, I can't be separated from mama. Like, I can't go out. Like, and then I was a twin. Like, I think a lot of this is like, I can't be separate. I can't be alone. I have to have you. And it is definitely a theme.
It was like you're fragmented off of consciousness. You're fragment off of consciousness, right? And then leaving that and being away from it.
Yes.
that you wanted to stay with it.
Yeah.
And then it was a common theme, right? With
Yeah.
your sister and then your mom.
Yeah.
And then now rebirthing and going back to actually it's the separation from consciousness that created that.
Which is an illusion. We're never separated from God and consciousness, but it really feels like it when you leave your mom's womb. Like, that's a terrifying process. And when I was reborn,
How healing.
it was really healing. And when my sponsor wanted me to reset my sobriety date after the ayahuasca, I was like, that's fine. Time doesn't even exist. And I was literally reborn, so it's fine.
Yeah.
I can do that.
Now, do you feel like, I know you did that with, like, your sponsor had suggested it, but do you really feel like for yourself that you weren't sober, or like that your sobriety time started over?
No.
Okay, yeah.
I don't
Such a
believe
3D
that.
term,
Yeah.
right? Such a 3D
Yeah.
term to like give it a
But it's
date
not a
like
big
that.
deal, right?
Yeah.
It's not that's why I was like, my ego would be the only part of me that would have a problem with it.
Exactly.
So I was like, well, but when I'm in a meeting, I share that I have 5 years without drinking. And in the beginning, I took it as an opportunity to bring up ayahuasca. So
Yeah.
that was my sneaky way
Yeah.
of being like, I'm a newcomer. And then people would want to know.
Why?
So smart. And then you're like, actually, it's now calling you.
Yeah,
I mean,
I
drop
was
it
like,
right now.
I'm just gonna present it here, and I don't talk about it very often, or if ever. I try to. I'm very
Respect the
respectful.
room.
Yeah.
It's like what I had to realize, and then it beat an outside issue.
Yes.
Like the programs talk about alcoholism, so that's
Yeah.
the space in which. And I know for me, when I did ayahuasca, afterwards, it was really hard for me to go into meetings because I felt like I was not able to express a part of myself, and coming from a past of like. Me always withholding a portion of myself to be accepted and to fit in, right? But now, like with the growth, I could look back and be like, I don't have to talk about it. Like
Yeah.
I go to work and I
Yeah.
don't discuss certain things.
Right.
Yeah, and I
But
think
it's just
that's
the
why
process
I left.
you have to go
I left
through.
the room because of that, right? Like I wanted to be respectful of the fact that I know that the way that I like to openly speak about things, right, is in alignment with going into the room and sharing that openly. So then I'm like, okay, I just shouldn't go out of respect, right? That this is what they think. So,
Yeah.
and I wanted to be able to be an advocate for all the things that I do. And I have to respect that and not go.
Yeah.
There are times even now that I find myself going to a couple programs here and there where I get invited and I go back in. I mean, it's a beautiful thing in those rooms to be able to hear the stories and then go, I relate to all these people in this room,
Yeah.
you know? And then if you can drop a little bit of hint at the end, like, oh,
Yeah.
how'd you end up here? Well, you know,
Yeah.
and then sharing the story and spreading the light a little more.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And not everyone feels that way. I had many people come to me after the meeting saying, I don't think you need to reset your
Yeah. Exactly.
And I'm like, well, thank you.
You know.
It doesn't really matter.
No, it doesn't.
So I
I feel like
did.
there's more story with the husband after this.
Oh, well, yeah.
Yeah,
I've got a feeling.
Yeah, okay. In my journey on the second day, one of the things that happened, I gathered a lot of the fragmented aspects of myself was one of the things that happened. And I actually saw a lot of people. I traveled to meet different souls. A few of my clients met me there. One of them, he's very spiritual. When I told him I saw him on my journey, he's like, that was you? He's like, was there snow? And I was like, and he's like, that's what that is. And they taught me lessons. One of my clients taught me that you have to ask before you go to a soul. You have to say, can I come, can I come talk to you? You can't just show up. So I didn't know that. Another one taught me that, I was like, why am I so slow to learn these lessons? And it was like how we tell kids, don't run around the pool over and over again. Like as humans, we're slow to learn. But once that seed is in you, you keep it for all of eternity. So it's like really slow. And it was like just beautiful lessons that I saw my family. I saw all my siblings, my mom, I saw her. And then ultimately all of the pain that I wanted to keep from my husband, I had thrown it up, and all I wanted to do was to be with him.
You know, and I remember this, right?
Yeah.
Because I think you're my therapist, but we grew as friends as well, you know, and we're like on this different but similar journey. And I know before you were going, you guys were not together, right?
Yeah.
Like you had kind of decided that you were going to go your separate ways and stuff like that.
So
and
after this ayahuasca, you're like, I need to be with him.
Yeah, I had divorced him. I had moved on. I was in a relationship. I was like, I'm going to hate you forever. And then I did make amends finally before the trip.
Yeah, which you had.
There was a calling. And so we reconnected. But I was like, we're not going to be together. And then after the journey, my like intensity of wanting to be with him was so strong. It was really sweet. It felt like when you go to camp and you can't wait to see your parents. Like that's how much I wanted to be with him.
And do you believe that whatever you released or the healing that you experienced allowed you to show up?
Yes.
And be in relationship with him?
Yeah.
That was day one. After a lot of my purging, the first thing I said to Natasha in the back was not that I wanted to be back with my ex-husband, but it was that I needed to really forgive him, and I needed to tell him the things that I accept my portion of it and what I did, and that I really wanted to have a relationship, a healthy relationship with him. And I remember sharing that, where I even called him in between the 2 days, and I called my children because I felt like I was going to die off that night. I knew I was done with it, you know. And then now here we are 3 years later, 2 years, where are we? 2 years, 2 years later. And my ex-husband, my son, who's 10 now, God came to me during my IA experience and had said, you know, about sending him as like, to awaken me along this journey and be here to love me unconditionally and show me that, or, you know, this. So he ended up also now doing ayahuasca, right? And so now we have gotten to this place, this relationship that's just beautiful. But that was one of my things, was like forgiving him. Yeah. Forgiving myself.
I think that's a huge thing with EMDR and traveling through plant medicine is being able to forgive by restructuring the past.
Yeah.
I feel like 6 years of sobriety, doing steps 3 times, writing down my resentment, seeing my part, making all of my amends. I had so much resentment still within myself. Like I wasn't talking to my mom, and now looking back, I needed to have that time. But when I went and did ayahuasca and I was in the womb and I felt her energy, which became what I brought onto earth, like feeling that fear, like cooking in her belly for 9 months and feeling fear, which my natural state in this world has been transmuting fear.
Yeah.
Right?
Right.
But even feeling her and what she experienced and having that lens of seeing like, oh, like she didn't grow up with a mom, like what she had experienced, like she loved me, but my dad and her were so afraid when I was in her stomach, you know. I feel like that is what helped me forgive my parents.
Yeah. Right.
What a beautiful story.
Yeah.
So he was like open arms to you?
Yeah, he had been praying for me for 3 years. It turns out that all he wanted was to have me back. Of course, you leave him and then he wants me, right? But I couldn't drive home. I was really out of it on the way home. It took me at least 2 weeks to feel like I was back here.
As they say.
Yeah. So because of where I just was on the journey, I was like, I'm going to drive as long as I can. And as soon as I'm done driving, I'm going to look to the side and there's going to be a sign for a hotel. And I'm going to call him and he's going to come get me.
Oh, I'm emotional.
Yeah. And so he did. He came and he picked me up with my oldest son. And my oldest son drove my car back. And I was just like, I want to be with you. Like, this is all I ever wanted. And then we made our baby.
Yeah, fast forward. You have a little love child.
Yeah.
You're such a new, changed being through like your hard work.
How long ago was this that you did Aya?
Well, Addie is 10 months. So 10 months plus 9 months. Whatever, what's that?
So you went just right after us, just shortly after, I think, right?
Yeah.
Almost.
It was like April of last year. I want to say something like that.
Yeah, it wasn't far after because I had started talking about it in therapy, and then roommate Jen at the time.
Yeah. Do you feel like you need to integrate more? You still have a lot to integrate?
Well, I think that it might be a lifelong process. I don't know if there is, I think when I become complete, I might be done in the human experience from what I understand. If that's how this works, I could be way wrong. Who knows?
Who knows?
But I definitely feel here in this 3D reality, which is really nice because it's super scary not feeling that way. And yeah, my life is just so different now. And I would have never been able to be with my husband again because of all the pain I was carrying. And if it wasn't for ayahuasca where I could purge it out, like, there's no way. The damage.
Or it could have taken you 20 years.
It would have taken me 20 years. Yeah, if I wanted to. Like, luckily we have free will. I could be like, no, thank you. I'm not going to. So
congratulations to you.
Thank you.
To getting yourself home.
Yeah.
Right.
And hard work, right?
Hard
work. I think that's the thing, like taking plant medicine intentionally, and it's not a one size fits all. It's like there's therapy, like there's all these steps to getting yourself to a place to sit with medicine, you know?
Right. So much
would you
information.
Do it again?
Yeah, I was just going to say, would you do it again?
I don't think so.
You're good.
If my life became so distressing, like if I really got off track to the point where I needed it again, I really do think that even the shaman said, we don't need this medicine.
Yeah, 100%.
That I could have done this. If I trusted God to heal me to the level that you can on plant medicine, because it bypasses all of your ego, I can be completely healed.
But would you want to go just to experience your soul? Like,
no.
Okay.
It's so scary.
No.
It was so scary. I was terrified.
It is scary.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. I just had a purge. The purge was so intense for me. Like I hear your stories and understanding, like going back to the womb and going back to these spaces, and my purge and what I've done on this 3D reality was what was shoved down my throat so much that I'm like, well, I kind of want to go back and see what my past life was like, or I want to go back to the womb. You know, I guess I was so blessed that in the womb, maybe, you know, that my mom felt
and
secure and safe, and who knows, but yeah.
And your lifetimes of being here and what you're here to uncover is completely different. Right. That's why it's like, nobody's ayahuasca experience, even EMDR experience, is going to be the same. Like, we become our own therapists. Like, I feel like with plant medicine and even EMDR, like, my body shows me what needs to be addressed, and it's different for everyone.
Gotta listen enough, right, to hear it.
You gotta be in a safe place, and your central nervous system slowed down enough to where you can meet yourself.
This was freaking so informative. Thank you. Yeah. So good.
Oh, good.
I'm so excited to share.
Do you want to like do a little bit, like do it on Catherine?
I don't know if right now.
No.
You don't Maybe another time we could.
Okay, yeah. I think it would be great to have you on with your...
Yeah, come do it. Only on the couch. We could...
I'll do some of the feel-good stuff.
Yeah. It doesn't have to be we're going to go to a traumatic event.
There's some where you can use EMDR to give yourself what you didn't get. And that feels real good.
Yeah. Let's do that. Yeah, let's have you back. Thank you so much for such an inspiration.
Was very fun.
Well, we want you to plug yourself for
you want to say,
some final takeaways that you want to give the audience. It could be anything.
I feel like you had some great slogans. I'm like, she definitely is a therapist.
Okay, I'll end with one more slogan. That's my favorite that I just got from my therapist. Projection gives you permission. So if I'm projecting like my dad onto my husband, it's giving me permission to elevate my behavior, to regress, to get into some sort of maladaptive coping strategy. So keep doing the work. That's what I want to say is like, I don't think we arrive. Like, keep doing the work, and we're like a human ladder. We just grab on to the person in front of us and climb on up, and then grab onto the next one. And it's so great that you guys are part of that ladder. So.
Yeah, same. Like, yeah, I love you both.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I love you too. And I'm like,
I want to touch your
wow.
hands.
Website?
I have a website. Okay. It's my name, Rachel Zaremba, lmft.com. And yeah, I don't have a lot of content that I've made that
Your
you can find,
website was great. When I looked on it.
Oh, thank you. I made it myself.
Yeah.
It was terrifying.
That was great.
It was great. And now you'll have this.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
No, amazing. Thank you, guys.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
All right.
All right.
That was fun.
That was freaking